But yeah, if you just want to start with sharing in general what you want us to know about your experience, specifically working in the theater, and how that came about for you, or just the important things that you think that we should know, because oftentimes we see a different perspective. So it'd be great to just hear your experience in general, and then maybe that will tie into what I talked about with gender norms, and race, and trauma resiliency, but maybe that'll be after. So
so I came into the California Correctional Department in 1997. Started off on a maximum security yard, High Desert State Prison. And back then, of course, there was nothing, no programming, very little programming, maybe an NA or AA and religious services. So I lived like that for a long time. There was like theater when I first encountered theater in 2000, and I believe it was 16. It was a foreign concept, right? It was a new program. At that time, I was at Lancaster State Prison, and it was a new pilot program. They brought it to the yard. I didn't know what it was, but it sounded interesting. And because I was so deprived of programming and social interaction with people from the community, I gravitated towards those types of programs. And when that came, I was scared of it in the beginning because it was so foreign, and theater, and I had never expressed myself in such a way, and I wasn't used to putting myself out there. And I knew that theater, you would have to get outside of your comfort zone. So I joined the first in 2016, and to be quite frank, the very first one I joined, I participated in the first few weeks, and then I quit. I quit because I was so scared of it, right? I was frightened, I was terrified. I told myself there was no way I can do this, that I would be able to get up on stage and perform, because that was the end goal for that particular group that I was in. And then, the next round, I remember Leah Joki, she was continuously on me. She was like, you have to do this. You have to do this. This is going to be the best experience of your life. I promise you. And I kind of regretted quitting, because I always, I always move towards my fears so I can try to overcome them. So I was determined with the push from Leah Joki. I was determined to join the next group. And when I did, the process was so uniquely beautiful. I'll say that, because of for me, that was the most special. I believe we created magic in such a, the prison environment can be depressing, can be oppressive, violence, gangs. So we created, in this educational space, we created this magical space that allowed not only myself, but the rest of the participants and the volunteers to kind of just express, be ourselves and express ourselves in such a creative and artistic way. And I didn't know anything about artistry back then. I just knew I was participating in something good, something that was fun, something that allowed me to express my inner child. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge jokester. Elizabeth can probably attest to that. So I think just that experience, looking back at it now seems like a long time ago, but the whole process was just so amazing. First of all, I want everyone to understand, what a group what theater does, especially in the prison environment. It brings people who ordinarily would not come together it brings them together, and it brings them together in a way that breaks down barriers, cultural barriers, um, racial barriers, gangs. It breaks all that down. It deconstructs it, and within that, like, we create a whole new culture in there. So, and I want to talk about too what it did for me specifically. Um, it helped me really to connect to Louie, right? Breaking down all of the tough layers of um, this identity that I sort of created for myself throughout my years in prison, because uh, you know I was taught from a young age coming into prison at 18, you don't show any weakness. You can't show any weakness, or you'll be taken advantage of. So that experience for me, it just kind of peeled back those layers, and I just really came into Louie, and I discovered, like, hey, I love doing this stuff. I love expressing myself in this way. I love the process and working with people, and just kind of sort of coming into that gift that I didn't know that I had within me, and to be able to do it with such a uh you know these are my friends, like we forge like a strong bond that lasts to this day, even though I don't like to say that I left when I was released from prison, that I left people behind, because I carry them with me in my heart and in my spirit. We talk about our experience to this day, and I want to talk about the performance aspect of it, right? And that's a whole nother, to be able to perform something that we work so hard for in front of our families, in front of volunteers, in front of guests. That was the first time that my mom had ever seen me doing anything uh, um, positive like that. And for me to be able to show my mom, this is what I'm doing in here while I'm in prison. Even though I'm in prison, I'm doing something good with my life. And for her to be able to see me perform, and for me to be able to tell my mom, I'm nervous, mom, I'm nervous. And then her telling me, don't be nervous, just be you. To receive that from my mom, that meant the world to me. The whole process of theater in prison, and just the artistry and the process and the working, the collaboration, and then being able to everything to come into fruition at the performance. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful experience.
Louis, I don't know if it's easy to articulate, but when you said the layers that you had to break down, like, just this image came to me of the layers that someone might pile, and we all have layers on us, right, that we're trying to break down throughout our life to get more belonging or connection with ourselves and others. Like, maybe just describe, if you could imagine those layers. Like, it doesn't have to be literal, it could be abstract, but some of those layers you felt like you had that you had to break down, or that theater helped you break down, maybe.
Okay, yeah. So those layers are the at the root of it's trauma, years upon years of childhood trauma, trauma that I've endured in prison, but it's also layers of these sub personalities that I adopted, that I identified with. We're talking about layers of gang culture. We're talking about layers of gender roles, in prison. We're talking about layers of pain. We're talking about layers of fear. Um, you know, and one of the things about prison is there aren't many spaces to kind of help individuals to really identify with who they are, you know, and to peel back those layers. And and I think those layers, if I were to describe them, they're like layers of cement, over just like layers upon layers of cement, toxic cement, not just cement, but toxic cement. And they can be oppressive, and they're burdensome, to carry that. And the thing is, I carried those layers for so long throughout my childhood and my stay in prison that it's like it becomes, you normalize it, you normalize those things, and this is the way that you live, and it's not a good way to live. A lot of it is due to protection. Of course, you want to protect yourself in the prison environment. You want to protect yourself from being hurt. You want to protect yourself from being taken advantage of. So a lot of those layers have a function and have a purpose. Unfortunately, one of the beautiful things about the space that theater creates within prison, because it helps you to kind of recognize those layers, and start exploring them, start chipping away at them, and just to and the support. It's just about supporting one another, to kind of to let each other know that, hey, it's okay, right? We don't have to put up this front. We don't have to um uh posture in a certain way. We can be ourselves, and you know and I think what helps that is, of course, the support from the volunteers and the facilitators. But I think the common goal, right? When we have a common goal that we're working towards together, and it's positive, and then the collaboration that takes place, like there's, like it's something. It's like a recipe that automatically will help you to individuals to peel back the layers.
Can you talk about some of the specific performances, plays, companies you worked with?
Yeah, the very first one was with Leah Joki and the Strindberg Laboratory. Elizabeth Malone was in there, Whitney Wakamoto, and just a team of other professional actresses and actors. With that one, it was called Fathers and Sons, and it was about, of course, it was about fathers and sons, um, and it was a bunch of individual plays, but it was a collaboration, and it was all centered around the theme of fathers and sons.
Louie, I'm an actor. I mean, for me, this is a new experience for me. I haven't never done anything like this. It creates a space to where we can be ourselves, outside of the prison politics and boundaries. We can come in here, be ourselves. It changes the dialogue in prison. Like now we have something to talk about. It expands our awareness and things that where we would never think otherwise. So,
the first time I ever changed the diaper, you pull in my hand. What? I have no idea what to do, so I put hand on the butt to catch your poo-poo.
Yeah, that
But
has
then
nothing
you
to do
stop
with
it.
Vietnam.
I use the other hand to block it. So I spray my hand, and I go, oh no, what do I do? This is so crazy.
Just gonna keep
And I put my hand on head like this.
And my play, I did with Tway, was a 10-minute scene, and for me, it suited me perfectly because it had a lot of comedy in it. I didn't know if I could pull it off. I'm still unsure of whether I pulled it off, right? But I can tell you I had a great time. And just me and Tway, we were watching it the other day. We went online and we looked it up, and we watched a piece of it, right? And to this day, we laugh. We're like, look at us, look, and it's so funny. Like we see it, and we see part of our performance, and it just brings laughter in our lives. And so the next one I did, I'm trying to remember. Um, there was a few before, but the most, okay, so Theater Workers Project, right, with Susie Tanner. Again, Elizabeth Malone was a part of that. And so many other wonderful actresses and actors. So that one, it was a little bit different because it focused on physicality, right?
Before I was born, life was a discovery. Love was new. Dreams were reality. Living wasn't a burden. Living was weightless.
I learned about plateaus and so I think that one was more challenging in the sense that it was more geared towards supporting our creativity and bringing, we didn't have such a clear defined, okay, this is what it's going to be. We're going to do it this way. It's like the process, we created it together. We came into that space not knowing what we were going to do. We had just kind of just general idea, okay, this is what it's going to be. This is the method, but we created it ourselves, right? And that one we did, and another thing is like we transformed the chapel into like a theater space. I thought that was awesome. And then we used, I think that the beautiful thing about theater is too is like we use the space that we can get. If we didn't use the chapel, if it was being occupied, then we would turn a classroom in education next door into a place where we can perform. And then of course there's I did several with Theater Workers Project. um I did several with Men for Honor. Like we did some performance pieces in the visiting room, where we wrote and we kind of narrated and acted it out. And this is all coming from the skills and the artistry that I developed over the years. And I was talking about this the last time I was interviewed. I never identified myself as an artist, as a poet, as a writer, as an actor until working with Susie Tanner and the Theater Workers Project. They working with Susie Tanner and the Theater Workers Project. They constantly referred or addressed us as artists, as poets, as actors. Um, and that so I never identified myself in that way. And like constantly hearing that, receiving that message, I began to say, like, what, I am an artist. I am a writer, I am a poet. So that's another thing, it just really helps you. you, I because I would have never imagined myself. I'm an artist. I'm a poet. I'm a writer. I'm an actor. I would have never identified myself in that way. And just to have those, to have that in my life, and to have received that in a place where, in prison, where people wouldn't ordinarily think you're going to receive such a beautiful gift, and those are gifts that I carry with me out here.
Do you have any additional, like, any monologues that you still want to, like, maybe perform sometime? Maybe.
So Marlene McCurtis, she's always pushing me to do stuff, and I told her, unfortunately, I don't save any of my writings, right? She's like, hey, do you want to do this reading? Do you want to do that? I don't save any of my writings, right? Uh, she entered me into a contest. She sent me my writing. She entered me into a contest. I recorded it, and then I won the local poetry contest.
Oh my
She
God.
was like, you won. I was like, it
I
was a
saw
small thing.
that.
Yeah, but I won. So I don't save any of my stuff. Maybe I should start saving it.
Yeah, it's so
I
important.
think so.
So I'm not familiar with the actual places that you were. I work at San Quentin, but it sounds like there are a lot of programs that you had access to, or maybe they were coming in one after the other. And you said originally there was just like step programs like AA or NA. Was it difficult to go join a program, number one? And is it also frowned upon by other people? Like, why are you joining that thing? Like, I would like to know something about what does it take for you on the inside to go, I think I want to join this.
Okay, so that's, you know, for me, I'm blessed, right? I always tell people that going to Lancaster State Prison, I was transferred there in 2013. That was the best thing that ever happened to me, because right away I got a job in the chapel, and working in the chapel, you know, working in really helped me to connect spiritually, um, and to be around such diversity, and it helped me to develop relationships with staff, right? And then from there, I got a job in the program office, and in that job, it really helped me to step into a leadership role. And during this time, this was a time when CDCR was really um, buying into the idea of rehabilitation, right? And they were bringing programs onto the art. And me being in the program office, I was at the forefront of it. So like I would help to kind of create, you know, the list, to kind of promote it, to work with the volunteers. And so that really helped me. So for me, I took it like always, um it being in that position, I try to demonstrate what to everyone, like this is like programming is okay, right? Because in the beginning, people weren't really, a lot of people weren't receptive to it, but they would see a group of men doing, always going to classes, doing, and then they would start to see, hey, what do you, why, what are you involved in? That looks fun, or I want to get involved. So it wasn't hard for me because I I craved that. I yearned for that interaction for my whole time in prison, because it's so disconnecting. You know, the prison environment is set up to it's isolating, disconnecting. It's barren. So when I had those opportunities, for me, I gravitated towards them. You know, like it wasn't hard. I didn't. I at that time too, I was coming into like, you know, like my transformation was, you know, it was, I was coming in, walking in my transformation. So having that inner strength, just enough strength to be able to do those things, and then gaining more strength from doing them. And then it's kind of like there's a culture, if you have a culture of negativity, of violence and all that, and you have another culture that's about positivity, pro-social behavior, and creativity, when you start to pull more numbers from the violent and oppressive side to over to this side, you it gets bigger. And then, you know, people start to gravitate towards that, you know. So that's one of the things too that theater, um the arts, you know, can do. It can change, literally change a culture on a prison yard.
So, given what you just described, what are some like different views of rehabilitation that you have some like alternative ways of thinking about what real rehabilitation could be, as opposed to sometimes, you know, what they try to create? What some, like, you know, you were right in the middle of creating an alternative, a very different kind of, very creative kind of rehabilitation. Can you talk about that?
You know, I think rehabilitation is subjective, first and foremost, right? There's no black and white recipe to rehabilitation and rehabilitative programs. First and foremost, there has to be a space, right? There has to be a space to support people wherever they're at. You know, it doesn't matter where they're at. They can be, you know, involved with gangs. They can be deeply lost at that time. They can be dealing with, but there has to be a space, right? I think too, for me, it's everything depends upon the facilitators, right? The kindness, being treated like human beings, like that meant the world to me. because you can have the greatest program in the world, but if the person, the leader in that program, is dehumanizing you, you know, putting horrible attachments on you, labels on you, making you feel like a prisoner, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Bottom line, being, you know, being treated with dignity, being treated like a human being, being supportive, that's the key. Along with the space, that's like the two, for me, those are the two fundamental things in rehabilitation. You know, and the rest can grow from there. And of course, the types of programming, you know, the types of different creative programming, especially with theater, it helps you to express movement. It helps you to, with emotional intelligence. Elizabeth really focuses on emotional intelligence. I remember she did like a emotional, what was it called? The emotional wheel, right?
Feeling wheel.
The feeling wheel, you know, which I thought was a great thing. I think the type of programming, the space, and the people facilitating, you know, those are the three biggest things.
Elizabeth, do you want to say a little bit more about the feeling wheel?
Oh, you can find it on, it's kind of a therapeutic tool. You can find different versions of it online. But it's really cool. It's a wheel that starts in the center of the kind of the big feelings of like anger, sadness, joy. There's a couple more. And then it spans out. So within anger, maybe there's 5 feelings. And within those feelings, maybe there's 2 or 3 that relate. So it just helps create more of an emotional vocabulary. So instead of saying, I feel angry today, maybe you're actually feeling resentful or shame. Or maybe instead of happy, you're actually feeling kind of, I don't know, playful. So it just builds kind of an emotional vocabulary. So I can't remember how we used it exactly. Oh, we used it as a check-in, like look at the feeling wheel. And
Oh yeah, that's right.
And kind of pick one. And yeah, I remember feeling like, oh, is this going to be really cheesy? And then everybody was like, can I have an extra copy?
Yeah.
And so but I think people in general, but particularly when you're in that kind of setting and just you don't have easy access to things that are just, you could just have easy access to, you know, it doesn't have to be that hard. But they don't do that for you. Just having that vocabulary and being able to identify, I think is really special and important. But you can do a lot of cool things with theater, and that you could build character from it. You could do, you know, like feeling walks or whatever, like how you're feeling. But it's a good tool.
It is. It's a great tool. I remember, like I was one of the ones who kept it. You know, and just to be able to see the different categories of emotions, the different range of emotions, it helped me to identify my own emotions. And that's another thing I want to talk about. I remember in the theater, I took theater class with ABC, Antelope Valley College, with Professor Barcos, and we had to do a 10-minute monologue for our midterms. I decided, she would say this: if it's not life or death, get the F off the stage, right? That was one of her things, right? And she said that in a way to push us, right? To go there, to really go there, to not be afraid. And what I did mine, like I went there. I did mine on my brother's murder. My brother was murdered in 2008 while I was in prison, and I did my whole piece around me having a conversation with my mom, the news reporter, then my brother kind of writing me a letter. And you know, the central theme was like this disconnection, like all the communication that I had during this grieving process was through phones or through letter writing. You know, that's how I grieved, or really, in the beginning, like I used to cry at nights in my cell alone, so nobody would see me, you know, because I didn't want to show that vulnerability. And you know, and I'm still grieving. and I'm still processing my brother's murder. So when I did this piece, it, you know, like I broke down. I broke down in a way that was healthy. You know, it helped me to process my emotions, and, you know, and to kind of explore that area, and it helped me to heal. You know, that's another thing performance and theater, you know, can bring to individuals. Like, it helped me to really heal and grieve, and to process those emotions, and to not be afraid to show vulnerability, you know, recognizing that it's a part of the human condition, you know, and seeing it as a strength. And to be able to do that um, in the prison setting, you know, for me, that was a huge step in my growth, huge step in my growth, and in my healing. You know, I wanted to note that, you know, I wanted to talk about that, because, you know, that's just another example of how wonderful theater and expression, um, you know, can be for individuals and for myself.
I'm just curious, Louie. A lot of these pieces that you talked about were personal stuff that you wrote. Did you also do anything where you took on roles
Yeah.
that somebody else wrote and you were cast in their pieces?
Yeah,
How
I
did that
did.
affect you?
So I did a what was it called? I did a piece from, I think it was called Savage in Limbo, I think. I think it's a play, yeah. And I was Tony Savage. It was just like this Italian kind of stud kind of guy, right? Uh, Professor Barkos was like, I got this perfect role for you. Read it. Let me know if you like it. I read it, and it was just we did what did I do? It was like a monologue, right? So yeah, it was like me having to step into that character. I read the whole play. I really got a good sense of who this guy was, and it was kind of funny. So yeah, that was fun. It was like she wanted us to do it in like a professional casting. So we walked in, it's like, hi, my name is Louie Brash. I'm gonna be performing. I'm gonna be playing Tony in Savage and Limbo, and then like looking at the a space on the wall, and, you know, all of that stuff. It was very professional, and you know, but yeah, that was pretty fun to take on another character. I don't know how well I did, but it was definitely fun to
And also Viet Gone. That's the play you did
Vid
with
Gone
Clay.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
Vid Gone too. That was
Yeah.
that was that was a little bit more difficult, because the character was very complex, and there was a father-son dynamic.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so that was a little bit more difficult, and it took a lot of practice. Yeah.
Timing was really key on that one. Yeah.
The timing was key, and then because there was this constant exchange of conversation back and forth, back and forth. Yeah.
It was awesome.
And do you think
Thank you.
playing those roles in any way informed your own work?
I think so. I think, you know, even playing those roles, you know, it just helping me to recognize, you know, those roles are really me, right? It's really me, and helping me to identify who I am in a deeper way. Yeah, and it helps me to think about. It helps me to be more critical in a good way of my performances, of everything, of my mannerisms, of my writing, of inflection, like every small detail. There's so much to it, right? So it helps me to be more aware of what I'm doing, and not just in theater, not just performance, but in my daily life too. Like, you know, like those things, the experience that I gained from the process and the actual performance, like those are the things that yeah, I feel like really character development. Like those experiences are so rich that it develops character, and it's hard to explain, but it gives you like a well-rounded experience, and then you can just carry that in every aspect of life, every aspect of life.
One thing I remember is getting to work with you, with Leah, and then with Susie, and some time had passed, like quite, at least, I think it was like 2 years or something.
Yep.
And I remember, like you said, Susie's process, it kind of gives you guys more of the reins. And so you were in this group, and there was this sense of like, you want everyone's voice to be heard, but Louie kept saying things that actually were more, let's say, just we're going to go in a more productive direction because he'd done theater before. And I remember kind of like looking at you being like, yes, you're, because we were supposed to be more hands off, which was very hard for me. And so all that to say, I saw like, it was actually cool for me to see, knowing that you started from not having a theatrical vocabulary to really quickly picking up on the vocabulary of theater and even directing, and knowing within, because we had such a short amount of time to create, you were able to say, actually guys, I think we should do this or that, or that's not going to work, or this is going to work on stage and it's going to read and an audience is going to understand it. And so it was cool for me to see how quickly you picked up on that, and you knew what would work, what wouldn't, especially with the time limits we had. I saw it really inform your work going forward through just knowing, like, even like simple things like cheating out, like, hey, your back is to the audience,
Yeah.
or even like timing and the way the vocabulary of timing in the theater, just through Leah's class. And I know because you had taken, and I knew Professor Barkos as well too. It's weird how I knew her in the past, but
Yeah.
those classes you had taken really set you up well for creating devised work on your own.
You make a great point, because there were times where sometimes I'd be concerned. I was like, are we going to be able to pull this off in 10 weeks, with a few hours, meeting once each week. And the challenge of working with different personalities, and everyone, in different stages of where they're at in their life, some with more experience in theater, some with no experience. Being, communication is key. Sometimes stepping in, and sometimes you have to be really delicate, and at the same time you have to support. The collaboration is not, that's another thing, learning how to work with people, the collaboration, that really shows up in everyday life too, right? Like you learn those, you can develop those skills in that setting, and then you can use them anywhere in life. It's definitely a challenging process, but the process itself is the magic, right? And learning all those things, like, I'm very like mindful of how is this going to be perceived by the audience, every little thing. So yeah, I'm surprised that you, no, I'm not surprised that you recognize that, but thank you for recognizing that and acknowledging that.
Here you are, we're sitting in the middle of this national uprising against police brutality in the last week or so. Some of the major changes happening in the United States. People are really questioning the whole justice system and the policing as well too. And I was just wondering if you have some thoughts you want to share about that. What is it like to be watching this happening around you and being part of it?
Yeah, I was just talking to someone about that yesterday. It's in 1992, I'm gonna go rewind. In 1992, during the Los Angeles riots, I was 13 years old, and I was involved in those riots. Right, I was addicted to drugs. I was in a gang. Just layers upon layers of frustration, anger, and trauma. I was involved in those riots simply for the fact, because at that time it felt good to take something from the world where I felt no connection to, and now coming full circle, 28 years later from the 1992 riots, and 25 years of incarceration, I see everything from a completely, I was telling, conversation I had is like, I'm still looking at the world through the 13-year-old lens, seeing everything, but now I have a completely different perspective. I see now, I understand now. And part of that is, the pain I felt back then was more from the trauma and from the anger and from my losses and the depression. Now the pain that I feel now is from sadness, seeing all the tragedy that's going on. But the silver lining is, out of the tragedy that's been happening for decades and centuries, really, it's really uniting people in a way that I think is going to affect change. I'm hoping that there's going to be some major changes, social changes, to kind of deconstruct this systemic racism and injustice and oppression, that we're all dealing with, especially Black folks, particularly at this time. So, it's sad to see everything that's going on. It's frustrating at times too. I literally cried when I saw, it's just, it hurts, because to think, I thought, everyone used to tell me that you're gonna go out to a world that's completely different, and then when I came out and I'm seeing things, that was going on back then, they're still going on today, and I'm like, where's the progress? And I'm getting emotional now talking about it, but it's I'm hoping that good will come out of this. Because I want to live in a world that's safe, that represents equality, justice. And I want to raise my family in a world like that. So it's tough, seeing everything that's going on, but I have hope.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was 92. I was also involved in that, and I participated in it back then. I was a reporter, but I was like involved in even like helping with putting off some fires next door to my building. And then I ended up spending the 5 or 6 years of my life documenting a lot of the gang truce movement and the women's organizing against the criminal justice system and some of the performances that came out of that period about the LA rebellion. Yeah, I'm very connected to that. And the fact that you just brought that up, that you were there at that moment, what you experienced then and what you're experiencing now, it's very, very powerful. Yeah. There's a lot of hope. This time it's so different also from 1992. The new generation, the fact that so many people in the middle of a pandemic are coming out and resisting and standing up, and it's very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just, it's encouraging to see this going on, the protesting across the nation and in different parts of the world. And, so that's encouraging. I don't support violence or, but I do support the unity, the peaceful unity and the protesting,
Thank you, Louie. Wow, that was really touching. I wrote some of it down just
Did you?
to keep in my awareness.
Uh,
I just was curious, have you been able to see your mom yet?
So that's another thing coming out during the pandemic. It's just, it's frustrating because I haven't. So I saw my mom one time she came over. There's no visitation where I'm at. I can't leave the home when I want to. So I haven't really got to experience
Wow.
like the world. I haven't got to spend time with family. She came over to drop off some food one time. She was in mass. I was in mass. It was like a hi and bye, no hugging, So I haven't got to spend physical time with my family or friends. Most of my time has been spent in the home. And it's just so bewildering coming out, in a pandemic, especially as a parolee, not just a returning citizen. The system wasn't isn't equipped to support returning citizens during a pandemic. So that's another frustrating thing because they're trying to figure out their recipe or their remedy is keep everyone locked into home and wait until it's over.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, that's another thing. Like most of the resources that are available to returning citizens, everything is on hold right now. I don't know if it's skewing my perspective because I haven't lived, I haven't lived as an adult in the real world. Like I'm coming out, all I know is pandemic, and my adult experience in the life out here in the free world is pandemic. So I don't know how healthy that is to start my transition, pretty much confined in a home, but that's the reality of what's going on. So
So Louie, this is
Wow.
Marianne again. When you were in prison, you found the arts and these programs as a way to express what you were feeling and to work on your layers. Are there any programs available to you now while you're in this transitional place?
so I can go on and on about how broken this system is and how it's not set up to truly support um, individual needs. Um, I'll say that the onus is on the individual, right? During this time, right? And I'll say I have to fight. Me personally, I have to fight for everything that I need, right? Right now during this time. I like, for instance, I do how many Zoom classes? I do like addiction support, thinking for change. I do like 5 or 6 workshops on my own to get that expression, a week. So I do like services online. So finding that platform and that way to express, it's really like I the support has been lacking in that area. They have some things set up, but to me, to be quite frank, it's a joke. They have like a homework assignment. How does music help you to cope with your anger? Like literally like 3 questions, and that's treatment right here. And then they have these 2 one-on-one sessions with the clinician, which like, okay, I don't know you. We're talking over a phone. You want me to just, like, to me, it's that's another thing that's frustrating. Uh, the lacking of the support. Um, but you know,
So no art programs, like no theater. You're not working on a
no.
piece right now.
So yeah, I was able to do like a workshop with Susie Tanner. That was pretty cool. We did it out here. We did like Alexa Kirshner. She did like a whole. So I was in the backyard. Just imagine right here, and we're doing movement. And she's like, do this, and yeah, we did that. We did a whole. Yeah, that was cool. We did that. I really, really enjoyed that. That was like a 4-hour workshop. It was, yeah, so that was one time she provided that for us. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. We did like different exercises, breathing, movement. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. But again, it's not something that's being provided. It's something through the relationships I've developed. It was offered to me. It wasn't something coming from the program of the house that I'm living in.
Wow. Yeah.
But you're an artist, so it seems like you're going to find ways to express yourself.
Yeah, and this is another being
right here, right now.
Yeah, this is another beautiful way for expressing. So I thank you all for that too.
But I've been really aware recently of like making sure we're not asking all this from you and kind of, it's emotional stuff we're asking you to talk about and then kind of leaving you. And so I'm not really sure I want to continue this conversation about how we could also best make sure we're giving back as well. So we're not just like, we're researchers and we're asking you to share all of this, and here we sit with this kind of privilege, on the other side. And yeah, so I don't know if there's an answer to it, but I have, your information and stuff. I'd like to figure out, this is kind of more for you guys as well, Kamran and Marianne and Lynn, like how we, make sure that we're offering something and not just taking your stories and your experiences, and making sure that a reminder for us all, and for you, Louie, like just be good to yourself today, because you did share a lot, and it's a lot that we asked of you to give to us emotionally today.
I mentioned it earlier. It's the people. For me, it's life. I've come to learn is about relationships, and when I feel like I'm being treated with dignity and being valued for who I am, that's what you give to me. That's what you all give to me. I've Dr. Afary, I had the pleasure of meeting you on the inside, and witnessing some of the performances that you put together with Miss Malone in there with Cal State LA. So, and Marianne, we've never met before, but, you're wonderful. You're great. I did this because I wanted to share, right? It wasn't forced upon me. I want to share. I want people to know if I can help in any way to bring awareness to this, I will. I know you, and I know Dr. Afary, so that's what you give me, And Marianne, you're wonderful. That's what you give me. That's what I get. Just being valued, just that recognition and being valued, that means the world to me.